Adding chickens to our garden was one of the best decisions we made. It elevated growing our own food to an entirely new level, and I couldn't be happier about it. The decision to get chickens was based on three main factors. First, we wanted access to eggs that were fresh, and I mean really fresh, straight from our own backyard, not the store-bought ones you find in supermarkets. We wanted to ensure that the eggs we consumed came from hens that were well cared for, where their welfare was a priority. Secondly, I wanted to create an ecosystem within our garden, a small sustainable system where we take from the soil but also give back. Chickens are perfect for this because they can take scraps from our kitchen and turn them into nutrient-rich manure that we can use to fertilize our garden soil later on. It's the perfect cycle of sustainability. Finally, we wanted a little bit of company in the garden. It's amazing what a bit of life and movement does for a garden. It brings everything to life. We had a short period where we didn't have a chicken flock, and let me tell you, it was horrible. We missed seeing the chickens walking around, scratching the ground, and just enjoying themselves. They offer a lot of companionship when I'm out there working. They're always right there with me, never far behind when I'm digging or doing any garden chores. We got our first flock back in 2000, and we got them from a local breeder in Banton. Unfortunately, that breeder is no longer in business, but it was a great setup with lots of different breeds to choose from. We've not gone back to that breeder since, but I'll always remember how exciting it was to pick out our first hens. Unfortunately, we've had our share of setbacks, including attacks from foxes, which are the main predators around here. The first flock didn't make it after about a year. We got a second flock, and once again, a fox attack wiped them out. Since then, I've definitely stepped up my game when it comes to predator-proofing the chicken run. Despite these setbacks, keeping chickens has always been something I've wanted to continue. With each setback, I feel like I get a little better at looking after them. I've learned a lot along the way, and I wanted to share some of those lessons with you, especially if you're thinking about starting your own flock. There are a few things I wish I knew before I began, and I think it's definitely worth sharing those insights. Before you invest a reasonable amount of money to start a flock, it's really important to know whether or not you're even allowed to keep chickens where you live. If you're out in the countryside with a small holding or large backyard, you're probably good to go, but if you live in a more urban area, you may face more restrictions, and there are a lot of rules to consider. I live in the UK, so these rules apply to my situation, but other countries may have different regulations, so make sure to check. One of the first things to consider is where you're going to keep them. In the UK, you can keep chickens in your own garden or on an allotment, but you do need to check with the local authorities. For example, I have an allotment where I keep chickens. It's a council allotment, and the rules allow me to keep chickens for personal consumption, whether for eggs or meat. However, I do need to notify the council before I bring them in, so that's something to keep in mind. Most people, though, will be keeping chickens at home. If that's the case, there are two main situations: either you're a tenant or a property owner. If you're renting, you need to ensure that your lease allows for pets and animals. In the past, I've had rental properties where the landlord was more than accommodating, but they could always say no. If that happens, you'll need to respect that decision. So if you're planning on getting chickens and you're renting, it's a good idea to check your lease before signing. For property owners, you'll want to check the deeds of your property. These deeds are called restrictive covenants, and they may contain clauses like, no poultry or livestock allowed. Many of these restrictions are more about preventing nuisances to others, like noise or smells, but some may prohibit animals outright. It's important to understand what your deeds say before bringing chickens onto your property. It's also important to know that disputes about deeds and restrictive covenants are civil matters, meaning if your neighbors have a problem with your chickens, it could escalate to legal action. So, it's worth talking to your neighbors beforehand to make sure they're okay with your chickens. Even if your deeds allow it, there could still be issues with noise and smells that may be considered a nuisance. For me, the solution has been simple: I try to be a good neighbor. My chickens produce a lot of eggs, so I make sure to share them with my neighbors. I also place the chicken run in the far corner of my garden, away from the fence line, so the noise and smell are less likely to bother them. But no matter what, it's always good to be mindful of your surroundings and neighbors when keeping chickens. Now, let me introduce you to one of the chickens. This is one of 4 in my current flock. She's a mix of Rhode Island Red and West Sussex. These breeds are fantastic layers, and I highly recommend them if you're looking for reliable egg production, if you have a flock of over 50 birds. You'll need to register them with the Animal and Plant Health Agency, APHA. The APHA will keep you updated on any health risks in the area, such as diseases like avian flu. If your flock is under 50, you're not legally required to register them, but I've chosen to do so. It's helpful to get notifications from the APHA about what's going on in my area, and it's good peace of mind knowing they're keeping an eye on things. One thing I didn't expect to deal with when I first got chickens was bird flu. The rules surrounding bird flu can vary year by year, but there are times when restrictions are put in place. For example, during bird flu outbreaks, you must ensure your chickens are separated from wild birds to prevent the spread of the disease. I wasn't prepared for this when it first came around, and in December 2000, I had to quickly purchase netting to protect my chickens. Additionally, food and water need to be kept covered so they aren't contaminated by wild bird droppings. In summary, before you get a flock, make sure to research all of the rules surrounding poultry care. Look into your property's deeds, rental agreements, and local regulations to avoid surprises down the road. Even if you're allowed to keep chickens, be considerate of your neighbors. Noise and smell can cause issues, so it's important to be mindful. Additionally, keep track of your flock size and make sure you register them if necessary. And always be prepared for any regulations that may come into play, such as bird flu restrictions. These regulations may seem like a hassle, but they're ultimately in place to protect both your chickens and yourself. These are some of the most helpful things I've learned about keeping chickens. And I hope they help you as well. If you have any tips or advice to share about your experience, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you've learned. In the next video, I'll be talking about what you need to prepare before your chickens arrive, so make sure to stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.